I need estate planning? When do I actually need to do this?
So as far as estate planning itself, really you need to do estate planning from the moment that you have an asset. And so what a lot of people don't think about is that having a vehicle is an asset. So you get one of those relatively early in life. And so one of the things is when you have that asset, if you want that asset to go somewhere that would not be where it would go if you're intestate. So for a lot of people, if you have a vehicle when you're in your, teens or 20s, if that vehicle is paid off, the place that it's going to go if you don't have children is it's going to go to your parents. So, for example, I have a friend that died when he was 24. He wanted his vehicle and his bank account to go to his brother. His brother is not his parents. So, in that particular case, like a good way for him to be able to secure that would have been to have a will or a living estate for those particular assets to go to his brother, who's younger than he was, didn't have a vehicle, didn't have a lot of money, and be able to pass those to the brother. If the court had gone with what happens when you're intestate, it would have gone to his parents. His particular wishes were that his parents got his life insurance policy, which was worth more than the car and the money in the bank account, and that he was able to help out his brother by giving him a little bit of money and the vehicle itself. So you don't have to wait until you have a bunch of children. You don't have to wait until you have a house. You don't have to wait until you have $1 million in the bank. These plans can be very important for anyone really at any age. And especially because we don't know when we're going to pass, we just know that it's going to happen to everybody. It's actually really important to go ahead and look into setting everything up. I know specifically with Springdale Law, one of the things that we do actually helps you as far as the earlier that you get your estate planning, the more you get out of it. One of the things that we do is we actually update. A lot of attorneys, you'll go in and you'll get your will or your living trust set up, and then you're done. So if you then sell that car, sell that asset, sell your house, whatever it is, or you buy something that's new, things change over time, you have kids, things like that, you're going to have to go back and pay for a completely new will to be made or pay for a completely new set of assets to be put into that living trust. And so it becomes kind of silly, right? Because if you don't think that you're going to die anytime soon, maybe you don't get a will because you don't want to pay the money to get that will to then later have to pay to do it again. So one of the things that we do at Springdale Law that's a little bit unique is we actually work with our clients and we'll do a meeting with you that will happen every few years. Automatically, we'll make that appointment with you and update everything. If you make a significant change, so let's say that you sold a house and bought a new one, you can also contact us and we'll go ahead and update those documents to reflect that so that we keep you in date. So in that way, specifically if you were to buy from Springdale Law, it's actually smarter for you to go ahead and get estate planning when you're younger because you get a lot more value out of it because you're able to update your assets throughout the rest of your life.
The sooner that you have estate planning, the more benefits that you're getting out of it. Right. So as long
Correct.
as you start making money, you have assets, you should have estate planning. But how about those students that are in school? For example,
Well,
international students, maybe they don't have a lot of families in the US, or American students that they haven't started making money yet. I think they also need to consider because estate planning also include a power of attorney.
yes. So one of the things that we do when we do estate planning, we'll typically set you up with a will, which everybody's kind of familiar with. We'll also set you up with a living estate, which we've already talked about as well. One of the other things that we do is we create those powers of attorney. So the durable power of attorney and the medical power of attorney. So that if something is to happen to you,
Mhm.
there's a named individual that can make those decisions for you financially if you're incapacitated or medically if you're incapacitated as well.
Right.
And this is particularly important. Like we just said, if you're an international student, if your family is not in the United States, like if they're far away, then you can particularly name either someone that's local that you really trust, or if you really do want the family far away to be the ones making the decision, you can name them as well. So some of the medical decisions that you'd have to make if you're unconscious, whether or not to perform a surgery, anything like that, if you have any form of incapacity. I have a friend and he very unexpectedly, completely normal day, his vision started to disappear throughout the course of the day. They go into the hospital and immediately they discovered that he had a blood clot in his brain that was pressing down on his optic nerve. So that's what was causing his vision to go away. Well, immediately they have to put him under because they're trying to stabilize his brain issue.
Mhm.
So luckily his wife was there with him and she was able to make those decisions, but he had to have brain surgery and she had to make that decision. Even though that brain surgery could change his personality and who he was, she had to go ahead and make that decision while he was in a medically induced coma. So if you have a situation where you're not yet married, so there's not that obvious choice of a person there, you need someone that can make that decision for you while you're incapacitated.
Right. So we talk about students, international students, and the
Mhm.
people who like start making money, anyone like who has assets, those people needs estate planning. How about married family or
Married families
kids?
definitely need estate planning just to make things easier for your spouse. This is especially important in several cases. One, any case where you have children, whether or not you're married, if you have a child that's a minor child, you need to make sure that you're able to take care of that minor child with those assets. And one of the things that estate planning can do, if you've created that living trust, is to be able to set up a trust for that child. So what that does is it will have a person that's making good financial decisions for that child until they reach the age of minority at 18, at
Mhm.
which point they'll gain access, depending on what your wishes are, they'll gain some amount of access to the trust and be able to use some of that money. If you think that your child might be irresponsible with money, there are protections that you can put on that. There's also protections that you can put so they get disbursements over time, so that later in life, when they're in their late 20s, early 30s, about the time that they would be buying a house, you can drop a larger asset at that time for them so that they're able to kind of have financial planning as far as their life goes, which can be a really great gift to give to your child if you are to pass early in their life. One of the other things to think about is if you have minor children, if something unfortunate were to happen to you, and let's say you're a single parent, it happens to you, or if you're a married parent and it happens to you and your spouse, and there's not an obvious person there at that point to take control of the child. So let's say you were on vacation, you had left your kids with a babysitter because you were on vacation and there was a plane crash. And so both you and
Right.
your spouse have passed at the same time. The question becomes, what happens to that minor child of yours? So basically what would happen is the babysitter would get contact that, the death had occurred, and one of two things happens. Either the babysitter calls the police because they're not sure who your next of kin is, at which point Child Protective Services becomes involved and your child might be placed in foster care, or babysitter is going to contact whoever the next of kin is that's local to the area, and then that person is going to have to go through the process of trying to figure out who's actually going to raise your minor children now that they don't have parents.
Yeah. So
um,
your kids will be living with someone that you never met, right? Until the judge appointed the guardian.
Correct. So they will be placed in foster services until the judge is able to appoint a guardian. Now, let's say that you have a bad familial situation. So sometimes people don't have a good relationship with their parents for one reason or another. And what you actually want is you want your sibling, or you want an aunt or an uncle or someone to be the person that would actually take care of your minor child. If what you want is that, you definitely want to create some of the documents that we put together for children that are minor children or adults with incapacity that will be treated as minor children legally in our packaging. And so what that does is it helps you have a document that the judge can look at when they're making those decisions, and a document that will release that initial custody to a trusted family member or a family friend, instead of the child having to go through that process of going to CPS and being placed with a foster family temporarily. So you can.
Parents, you want to make those plans to make sure that your children has enough assets, right? Has like the financial aids to finish the college if anything
Yep.
happened to you. But also you want to make sure that if anything happened to you and your spouse, who's gonna taking care of your children, right? I don't want my children end up living with someone that I don't know, right? I'm not sure if they're gonna taking care of my kids the way that I would have taken care of them, right?
Exactly. And it's particularly important, like I said. I know when I was growing up, my mom was unmarried for most of the time when I was growing up. And so something were to happen to her, her wishes were for me to go to my aunt, which is my mom's parents had passed when she was younger. So she definitely wanted me to go to my aunt. If there was some issue and my aunt weren't able to take me, then I would go to my oldest sister, who's 13 years older than me. So in both of those cases, those are trusted family members that are aware of those wishes. They know how my mom wanted me to be raised, and it would be the same thing. And so they would be able to take care of your minor child. Or in the case of an adult with special needs who's treated under a guardianship, that guardianship of that adult child would then pass to whoever it was that you wished.